So, last time I introduced you to the human members of the Amaranth Angels. This time, though, I want to indulge my fellow history nerds and talk about the out-of-universe inspirations for the names. The last names, at least, of these girls. I'm sure some of you already figured out the theme on your own, but if you haven't already, that's what we'll talk about today. After all, every good military moe story, even one set in space like this, really needs to have at least some historical references, am I right? Before we get into that, though, make sure to go check out the Kickstarter campaign and the animated teaser trailer. We've got about 3 weeks left to go to get the goal, so every contribution helps. If you share a similar anime taste with me, and if you enjoyed the sort of content I usually make on this channel, I think you do, you're going to absolutely love Amaranth Angels, so don't miss out. So here's the theme revealed. Seeing as Amaranth Angels is about pilot girls, it only made sense to name them all after real-world ace pilots. Not in the same way as something like Strike Witches, though, where the girls were kind of anime girlified versions of real-life famous pilots. Rather here, I simply borrow names since it's relevant to my interests. And as for the question of whether the Amaranth Angels are in fact descendants of their namesakes in their universe, I'll let you decide what to believe. So without further ado, let's get to it. Once again, we start with our main character, Hiroshi Nishizawa. Those of you who've read up on World War II aviation, specifically on the Japanese side, have probably heard about Hiroshi Nishizawa, perhaps better known as the Devil of Rabaul. Born in 1920 in a small mountain village in Nagano Prefecture, Nishizawa got interested in flying at a young age and started training to be a pilot at just 16. By the time war broke out, he was more than ready, and while his career was, sadly, not all that long, Nishizawa would become one of, if not the most successful Japanese fighter ace of the war, with anywhere between 86 and well over 100 victories. He earned his nickname, the Devil, for his breathtaking, brilliant, and unpredictable aerobatics and superb control of his aircraft while in combat. He wasn't averse to showing off his skill every now and then, even while over enemy territory, and earned his ace status in April 1942, and he often flew alongside his friend and fellow famous ace pilot, Saburo Sakai. Perhaps fittingly, given his skill, Nishizawa's death, which did come in the air, was not while he was flying. He died as a passenger on an IJN transport plane in late October 1944, at age 24. He was promoted to lieutenant junior grade after his death. Next, we go to the name behind Sai's friend and longtime comrade, Botan Shinohara. Her namesake is perhaps a less well-known, but also a very successful pilot all the same. Hiroichi Shinohara was born on a farm in Tochigi Prefecture in 1913. He would graduate flight school in 1934 with the rank of corporal, and by 1938 he climbed all the way up to warrant officer. His flight career was also unfortunately fairly short, but he burned very brightly in that time span. Flying a Nakajima Ki-27 fighter, he first saw combat against the Soviets on May 27, 1939, and within 24 hours, he claimed 10 kills and ace status, making him the first pilot in history to score 10 victories on his first day of combat. He would also later set an Imperial Japanese Army record by claiming 11 victories in a single day, 1 month later. Sadly, he would meet his end on August 27th of that year, just 3 months after his first day in combat while escorting bombers. During his short career, though, Shinohara claimed a staggering 58 victories, including 3 in his final battle. He received a posthumous promotion to second lieutenant, and he earned the nickname during his career, Richthofen of the Orient. We briefly step away from World War II to look at the namesake of our next pilot, Reena RoR. Well, I'm sure there's at least one German ace pilot with that last name too. I indulge in a little national bias by basing Reena's last name on Israeli ace pilot, Yaakov Richter. Born in a kibbutz here in Israel in 1945, he's the 8th highest scoring ace in Israeli history, with either 10 or 11.5 victories, the .5 being a joint kill, and his career in the Israeli Air Force spanned 22 years, and he earned his kills between the years of 1968 and 1973, the last 5 coming during the Yom Kippur War, against Syrian and Egyptian-flown Soviet-built planes. All of his kills were earned in a Mirage 3 fighter. Another reason I chose to reference him was because it gave us a jet ace representation among the characters. Later in his career, he'd also command the same squadron in which he flew for much of his service in the Air Force. As far as I know, he's still alive today at about age 78, having moved into the business world after leaving the Air Force. We jump back to World War II for our next character's namesake. Miho Yamoto gets her last name from Japanese ace Tetsuzo Iwamoto. Born in 1916 in Karafuto, Iwamoto would become one of Japan's most successful aces during the war, and a rare survivor of Japan's naval pilots. He is credited with at least 80 victories, though some sources put him at over 100. So depending on which sources are used, either he or the aforementioned Hiroshi Nishizawa was Japan's top scoring ace of the war. Over the course of the war, Iwamoto would also rise to the position of Chutai leader, leading a squadron of his own. In the later part of the war, he also helped train new pilots. Iwamoto began his military career in 1934 as a naval mechanic before being accepted to pilot school. He served on the China front for a time in 1938, before fighting in the Pacific for most of the rest of the war. As I mentioned earlier, Iwamoto survived the war, a rare feat for a naval aviator in Japan at that time, and thanks to that, his diaries are preserved. In it, he lists his kills, he believed he had over 200, and also wrote about his dogfighting tactics, which is very interesting. Sadly, he still died fairly young at age 38, due to medical stuff unrelated to the war. Last but not least, Ayame Hansen, a product of a mixed Japanese and American marriage in universe, earns her last name from American ace pilot Robert M. Hansen. While a lesser-known American ace of World War II, Hansen is a pilot who deserves remembering as much as any. He was actually born in India to Methodist missionaries and attended missionary school there, then attending junior high school in the States before going back to India and becoming a light heavyweight and heavyweight wrestling champion. He was in university in the US when Pearl Harbor was attacked, and enlisted in May 1942 from Naval Aviation. He earned his wings and a Marine Corps commission as a second lieutenant in February 1943, and he proved a master of solo air combat, making 20 of his 25 total confirmed kills early in his career, in 6 consecutive flying days, flying an F-4U-1 Corsair. Near the end of that year, Hansen was commended for the Medal of Honor following an action that saw him down 4 Japanese Zeros solo in January 1944, and an earlier mission that saw him lead a bold attack against 6 Japanese torpedo bombers in 1943. Hansen would survive being shot down once during the war, but he met his end on February 3, 1943, one day shy of his 24th birthday, while attempting to destroy a stubborn enemy anti-air position. His Medal of Honor was presented to his mother in August 1944, and in addition to that, Hansen also earned during his short career the Navy Cross, the Air Medal, and 2 Purple Hearts. While most of the recognition for ace pilots goes to the most famous ones, like Richthofen, Jaeger, Hartmann, etc., there are so many other brave, skilled pilots whose names are worthy of being remembered. Especially during World War II, so many of these young men didn't survive despite their prodigious skill and gallantry. As someone who enjoys history and believes in the importance of preserving it, it was an easy choice to make to base the last names of my Amaranth Angels, the human ones anyway, on these real pilots. And if you're wondering about first names of the characters, those were more arbitrary and not really worth a separate video. I hope you found this interesting, both in terms of what it means for the Amaranth Angels characters to share these noteworthy names, and to learn a bit about these 5 heroic ace pilots. And without giving anything away, I can say that these aren't the only historical references that'll appear in Amaranth Angels, though for some others you might need to wait for future volumes. There are just 3 weeks left to make sure the Kickstarter campaign hits the goal, so go check it out and back it today. Next week, despite things still being very busy on my end, I do hope to get a Girls Und Panzer video out in celebration of the Japanese release of Das Finale Part 4, so look forward to that. That's all for now, so until next time.